Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audiovisual Services. Man, I got to tell you, it's hot out there right now. I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to make it today, but here I am anyways. Our co-host, Ryan Finch, he'll be back with us next week. I think the heat got to him, and he just didn't want to do this with 90 degrees plus. But either way, we're going to get on with our show. IT and technology are such a core part of why we actually host this show that we thought this was the right guest for everybody. Everything in our current society is driven by IT and technology. When the pandemic began, the first thing people needed to know was if their internet would hold up and can they work from home. So in today's episode, we'll be talking with an industry expert and discussing some tips to improve your work from home and technology experience. Before we get there, of course, we're streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you get a chance, subscribe to those channels so we can continue to bring any new content and new ideas. And of course, we're on every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And don't forget, make sure to try to leave a comment. You can go to any one of those platforms, leave a comment, and we're going to try to bring you to the show. I mean, who doesn't want to be on stage? This is great stuff. Either way, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. Robert Cioffi graduated Iona College in 1990 with a BS in computer science. After working at GE Capital for several years, Robert pursued an entrepreneurial calling and founded Progressive Computing with co-owner Ugo Chiulli. In his career at Progressive Computing, Robert has worked diligently to build the solid foundations on which his company stands: humble confidence, teamwork, commitment, and respect. Robert is widely known and truly enjoys to be an expert public speaker on a variety of technology topics. His pragmatic, decisive, and creative personality is evident in the dozens of business magazine articles published in the last 2 decades. Robert is actively engaged in the IT Nation Evolve peer group, both as a member since 2010 and a facilitator as of 2020. At heart, Robert is a go-giver. He has volunteered as a CCD teacher, served on several nonprofit boards, and is a board member for the prestigious Business Council of Westchester. Finally, Robert is a bit of a LinkedIn junkie where you can follow his unique writing and thought leadership. I got to tell you, this guy has been so busy that it took us 21 episodes to get him on. So everyone, please welcome Robert Cioffi.
Well, thank you for that very warm, excuse the pun, introduction, Joe.
It is a little warm. Hopefully the AC is not blowing too much into this microphone right now because it's a little warm.
Well, we all need it right now.
I think so. I think everybody's electricity is kind of on the rise right this second. But
indeed.
This is why you have it.
Yes.
Right? But so how are you doing today anyways?
I'm great. Listen, my mantra is I'm 6 feet over, not 6 feet under. So any day that I'm alive is a good day. I try to live a life that one which is filled with gratitude. So I like to take account for even within the day, not just at the end of the day, the things that I'm grateful for, and let those people know around me that I appreciate them truly for the things that they do.
It does make life better when you actually appreciate it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Well, I see you're ready for the 4th of July as well. I see the flag right behind you.
That's always tremendous. Up in my office. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing.
I had the flag. It was kind of sitting in storage, and I said, no, this thing needs to be displayed properly. So why not as a backdrop in my office?
I think that was a good decision. It's much better than the pirate flag I sometimes have behind me. It doesn't set the right tone, I don't think.
Well, it depends on your mood or what the occasion is, but certainly,
it's kind of always my mood, though. That's the problem. So,
okay.
But I don't think it represents all of the team very well. So, either way. But listen, I guess just to kind of get things started, I can imagine that the IT world has been pretty busy. And I know I see you everywhere, so I guess tell me, how important is IT and technology to the average person right now?
Well, I think it's very obvious how important it is. I've been saying for a while, technology is like food. You have to eat. If you want to participate in now what we are, 20% into the 21st century, for all of you old timers like me who were born in the 20th century, we always thought about the 21st century being in the future. Well, we're already like a good part of the way through it. So technology, and this is an obvious statement, is so pervasive in our lives. What I mean by that is in our homes, in our work, in our play. How does one survive without technology? How does one not become so dependent upon technology? And the answer is that you can't. If you want to participate in society today, you're plugged into technology at multiple levels.
It really is everywhere, right? My neighbor across the street he's got this refrigerator that's got like a 20-inch screen built into it. And one time I was over his house, he's got music playing. I said, I'm curious, where are the speakers? Because I don't see them. He said, it's coming from the refrigerator. I said, I don't think that's the greatest quality, but still, I'm impressed.
That might be episode 22 or 62 or something, where we could talk about where technology maybe shouldn't be, but I'll leave that one there.
I tend to agree, but I was still blown away by it, I gotta say. It's good stuff. But that is so true. I mean, technology is everywhere. The connections, some people are definitely afraid of technology at the same time.
And that's okay, but you still can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it. It's funny. We have a few Facebook portals, and I actually got one for my family. They're up in Boston. And the best thing about that is it's got the little thing to cover the camera at the top.
Yeah,
my dad loves that.
I got one right here, but I won't slide it. So,
but it's like one of those little things because everybody still feels that Big Brother is watching all the time. So, yeah. But look, I don't want to spend too much time, on the past. But I think that your company's role in the beginning of 2020 was pretty critical. So I think that would be a good step for everyone to hear kind of what happened in the very beginning of the pandemic for Progressive. Sure. And how did your team adjust throughout the year as well?
Yeah, there's multiple threads within that topic, right? There is how did we respond as a company, both financially and business planning? How did we respond and react to the needs of our customers? How did we plan or take care of our team members, our employees? All of those are sub questions, I think, of this larger question. I'll approach it from the service delivery side first and say that we had a mix of different situations. Some customers were very well prepared for the pandemic, maybe strategically and maybe by accident, with a full adoption towards cloud environments, hosted voice systems, and other hosted systems, so the technology dependence on being in the office wasn't as great. Now that lends itself better to some business models and some business types than others. So for instance, a manufacturing plant can't necessarily work 100% remotely because you got to make stuff, right? And you have to be there. But certainly anyone in the service business could benefit from a 100% cloud play. So the story there is that we had all of our customers were all over that spectrum, from the woefully unprepared to the magnificently prepared. And it was just a matter of dealing with everybody along that whole broad spectrum of preparedness. And so it was a challenge because that first month, from about mid-March to about mid-April, our ticket count quadrupled overnight, and it stayed there. It was a mad rush to get things done. People grabbing computers, setting up at home, how do I work from home, or systems that were only designed to support a limited number of remote users, not the entire office. When we look at it through the lens of a pandemic, hindsight is always 2020, of course. I don't think necessarily anybody was upset, but it certainly opened up their eyes to say, wow, maybe we should enable the technology so that we've got now flexibility to work from home, to now attract different employees that maybe we weren't able to attract before, or to offer certain types of work from home benefits that we had not considered before. So technology has become a very important part of business plans and strategies and decision making.
No, it certainly has. And, you would think a group such as ourselves, which is technology based, would have had a lot of those answers. But, there's just so many things that we just weren't designed for,
Yep.
at that exact moment. And, like anything else, I mean, you need to adjust and make your moves, and use that,
Of course.
that infamous word pivot. But
yeah.
But so how did you guys handle it as an organization?
Well, that's interesting. We put on a few different hats. We put on our optimistic hats and we put on our pessimistic hats because we really just did not know. And I think everybody was feeling the same thing. There was a lot of that FUD factor, right? The fear, uncertainty, and doubt in those early weeks. So we had modeled out. Actually,
I should have known you'd be an acronym guy. I really should have known that.
Sorry, I not only do I speak English and Italian, but I speak another language called Acronish. It's all in acronyms. So I try to slow down and explain what the acronyms mean. But we modeled, in fact, I was heavily involved in the modeling of what does the finances of this business look like? Should we incur a 10, 20, and even a 30% reduction in our revenue? Now, thankfully, none of those came to pass. In fact, in many ways, we grew, which was a very interesting phenomenon to happen in this market. Many industry experts, at least from the IT industry perspective, were modeling that quick bounce, right? Like we're going to have a small slowdown, and then it's going to just, it's a V-shaped recovery. Other people likened it more to a U-shape, where it was a more gradual return. But we stayed busy the entire time. We had some of our customers that suffered a loss, others that grew, believe it or not, during this time frame, and we even picked up some customers during that time frame. So there was a lot of shifting and balancing and a lot of chaos. But thankfully, none of my financial models where I had looked at it through the pessimistic lens had come to fruition. In fact, we had enjoyed an upswing. No one lost their job here. We maintained 100% of our staff. And just quickly about our team, people were dying to come back to the office, not literally, figuratively, dying to come back here because they really enjoyed the environment. Yep, that's a cross-section of some of the people that we have. There's a bunch of people missing because we're up to about 30 people. But
you had a good team. You have a good team.
People, it was heartwarming in a way, during all of the doom and gloom of the time, to hear from people like, hey, when can I come back? Because I really miss the place. So over the summer, because we were considered an essential business, following guidelines and always delayed it by a week or two, we started to allow people coming back and navigated. What does that look like? How do we sit? How do we sit, eat? Go to get even things like using the facilities, like how does that work? So, we all made adjustments and now we're 100% back.
Yeah, I see we got a question here from our friend Marissa. Any strategy tips for retention since you're able to keep everybody?
Yeah, I can take that as either employee retention or customer retention. I'll start with the team retention. If you'll notice, sometimes I use weird words like team, not employees or staff. That's very intentional around here. Speaking of language, we do intentionally use words like team. We don't call our customers clients or customers. We call them partners because we truly feel like we're a part of their business and a partnership with them. So let me start with team retention. First, you have to establish really solid core values and make sure that you have the right people on your team to begin with. Because if you don't have the right players, and I'm going to go down that road of RPRS, right person, right seat, things that you probably all have heard of, making sure that you have the right team in place is the starting point. But even when you have the right team, it's from a leadership perspective, it is having an open door policy to allow people to voice their opinions and concerns and really listen to them, not just to allow things fall on deaf ears, but to actually act upon things if it's reasonable to do so. So So in terms of team retention, it's really, it's even the same thing with our partners. You really just got to care, and you got to care genuinely, not just say that. That's not lip service. And I think that caring attitude and what I kind of said earlier about being grateful, I think it comes through. I'd like to think it comes through. I'd like to think that people pick up on that. And I guess the evidence I can show you is as a facilitator for other peers in my industry and working with other businesses so closely, I can see when a company does not care about its team or its clients or customers or constituents or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you can see things, you can see the cracks. You can see where the problems are. And if I really had to boil it down to just if you care, then that makes up for a lot of the faults that we as human beings bring to the table.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it was a few months ago, Liz Bracken-Thompson from Thompson & Bender, she was on the show. And she had said something I guess I hadn't heard, yet it's like, it's like if you buy a new car, after you buy it, you see them everywhere. Well, I've seen the saying everywhere since. She said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
And it kind of resonated that day. And meanwhile, I've read it like 12 different places since. I said, man, this was really on top of that thing, But it makes more sense every single time because it is true. Nobody's really listening to your words if they don't feel like you're really sincere.
They don't. There's a quote from Maya Angelou, and I'm going to probably butcher it a little bit, but it's, people don't care about what you do for them or what you know. What they really care about is how you make them feel, right? And you can make them feel good by caring. Give a what.
Yeah, and that one doesn't actually cost anything.
No, it does not. Costs $0.
You just got to listen a little bit sometimes.
All the time.
I'm going to remember that part about the partners.
Okay.
I'm interested in that because I figured that you guys just called me a patriotic pirate. I didn't think you guys called us partners, but that's pretty good.
You are a patriotic pirate.
I mean, that's from our friend Mike D, and he's, like I said, he's a little bit of a loose cannon, so I'm not sure.
Well, be careful because pirate means something in my business, and it's not a good thing. So.
All right. Well, we're not that kind of pirate.
Yeah, I get it.
We're not hacking. We're not doing any of those things. But as you start to see some things turn positive, from a technology perspective, what do you think are going to be some of the challenges now as people are starting to come back in the office, but they're not all there? Nobody's really like straight ahead got a full plan yet. It's all in development.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a segment of the business population, right? Some companies really never left, and they've been full steam ahead. But for those that are struggling with what to do next, I think it's natural, and you shouldn't feel either embarrassed or alone, because I think a lot of companies are still trying to navigate through that. We're starting to see pent-up demand coming back. It really has to start with a strategic plan, right? You got to get your leaders together, and you've got to get your trusted advisors. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to selfishly say, your IT provider really ought to be someone who has a seat at the table, just as much as your accountant or your lawyer, or on a personal level, you might consider your physician to be your personal board, right? But you really got to get those sharp minds and trusted people together to develop a plan. From a technology perspective, there's a lot of answers out there. It's just a matter of budgeting appropriately for it. And that's not a way for me to coyly say, oh, you got to spend money on something, right? You got to write a big check. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Some things do cost money, and some things are an increase of budget, but not all the time. Sometimes it's more about right sizing or adjusting the budget or the strategy so that it fits the new business goals. Where we succeed is when technology is aligned to your business goals and challenges, and when technology fails. Whereas if you're a business leader listening to my voice right now and you're feeling frustrated by technology, it's likely because your technical people are not aligned to your business goals and challenges. So that's why I really emphasize the point that someone representing technology really needs to be at your leadership level, right? As even a virtual or a part-time seat at that table to really understand what it is that your business or your organization is attempting to accomplish, and how does technology help you get there.
I mean, I think that makes sense. Everybody learns in the beginning of starting a business. They say lawyer, they say accountant or CPA. Like they don't usually say technology at the very beginning.
They will
And
now.
At this point, could you honestly do anything without it?
Well, that's a question and answer that I think I know the answer to, but that is a great question that I can't force everybody to agree with me. But I think the answer resoundingly is you can't do without that trusted advisor. You must have somebody that you can tap to help. And if you've got a small practice or you're a solopreneur or just a few people, you can find someone who can give you enough education and direction. But if you're a larger organization, whether it's outsourced to a company like mine or staff or even a combination of that, you really have to have some good trusted people who know what they're doing and can translate. Remember, we were talking about languages before. Translate the techno babble that I normally speak behind the scenes, right? I speak geek, so you don't have to, right? I can translate that into English, human, and business terms so we can have an intelligent, strategic conversation.
It makes sense. A question had come up here about, I don't know where it went here, but Windows 11. If there was anything that you could speak to Windows 11.
Good question. A little premature since it was just announced about a week ago. Actually, it was on the 24th that Microsoft unveiled what Windows 11 is about. So it's still a little too new. Microsoft is a bit famous for releasing a preview and then, making last minute adjustments before it hits the market. But I think it's exciting because the operating system is now addressing where technology is going. It's the first operating system to really be cloud-centric and cloud-focused, right? So there's this notion of whether, and this is an industry technical term, of fat client versus thin client. And all that means is if it's a thin client, all your stuff is in the cloud someplace, and I can use almost any device to get to it, right? So I don't need a lot of intelligence or a lot of horsepower to work. A fat client is where everything is done and stored locally. So it's interesting how they're threading the needle here between slimming down the operating system to adjust to this more cloud-oriented future. Much to still be seen, so stay tuned. And if we're connected on LinkedIn, then be sure to just keep looking for posts from me because they'll be coming on that. Yeah,
no, I know you guys have been very in tune to the Microsoft products, and I'm sure that fits most of your clientele. Office 365 we use all the time. It's been great. Yes. There's certainly there's more and more features. I think it's like anything else, any software. The more you learn, the more there is, and then the more you use.
Correct.
I didn't use OneNote at all until recently. Now I think it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Because I typically would, write a note down and then put it someplace. But in the transition on our side of working at home, working at the office, one day here, one day there, I'm like, man, where the hell did I put that paper?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Well, paper is technology to a caveman. So
sometimes I'm a caveman. I think that's what you're saying.
But
so
it's
you
okay.
Don't really call me
a caveman too.
Okay.
I like paper sometimes, but your point is very well taken. It's using that, especially once you get exposed to something, then you wonder how did I live without it. I just I want people to feel like just because 11 is coming out doesn't mean you should run to it, right? This isn't was it Hamlet who said get thee to a nunnery? You don't need to go rushing to get on Windows 11 right away. Windows 10 support won't be sunset for another 4 years, I believe, is the date that they pegged on it. So your current computer will likely be replaced by the time you need to worry about upgrading an operating system. And just remember, being on the cutting edge means you might bleed.
Very nice. I see what you did there. That's good.
See what I did?
That's good. Okay. Yeah, that was good. How long does an average computer go? What should people expect to get out of an average?
That's a great question. I'll probably get some
computer, I should say.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some blowback on this, but Robert's rule of 18 is in play here. Robert, as in me, not the other Robert's rules. Robert's rule of 18 says that for every human year that passes, your computer ages 18 years. So if you've got a very well kept computer that has gone to the gym and has eaten right and taken care, and drinks water and doesn't swill down a gallon of whiskey every night, yeah, there you go. That's not vodka, is it?
No, I need electrolytes.
Oh, okay.
Electrolytes,
okay.
Yes.
I was gonna say, like, do we really know what's in that bottle? Yeah. So yeah. So, even a very well-kept computer at 5-6 years old is kind of getting up there, right? I like to say I had a neighbor, Wes, who was 99 years old, still driving around, still cleaning his gutters out. I mean, he did it really slow, but I mean, for Pete's sakes, the guy was 99. So, as much as he still did stuff, his speed and his abilities were incredibly limited. So another rough way to look at this is we think that the magic number is 5. Anything more than 5 years, that machine has just got to go. There's a lot of statistics that show electronics have a very high failure rate in the first 30 days. And then once it burns in, is what it's called. It's called the burn-in period. Within those first 4 to 5 years, the failure rate is very low. But as soon as you hit around that 5th year, the failure rate starts to skyrocket. Plus, it's a productivity issue. And I know Dardano is chiming in here because he's a wise you-know-what. But, he admitted to me foolishly that he has his last computer was like 13 years old.
He says it's 126 now.
Yeah, something like that. So
yeah, he's pretty good for that. But, actually, he does have a good point. Take out his 126-year-old computer. Does that mean that computers that use more cloud-based operating system will overall have less horsepower? And will PC and laptop prices come down because of that? I think, that with the recent Mac chip change, one of our guys is, of course, doing a lot of creative, and he needed to be mobile. So besides his one big machine, he needed something that would connect. And everybody's been touting that new Mac chip. So I'm curious. That actually is a good question, Mike. Thank you for being a part of the show today.
He comes up with good ones.
Every now and then, a blind squirrel, man. Blind squirrel.
Blind squirrel. Yep. Every once in a while they find a nut. So it's a great question that I have some insights into. I wish I had a crystal ball, because if I did, I probably would be on a beach someplace, not talking to you. Don't take that the wrong way. But
listen, I was on a beach someplace, but I'm here talking to you.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, who's fool? Why'd you come back?
Because this is important stuff.
It is important stuff. So if I can get back serious, and that
Absolutely.
I mean, the theory is, and I think we have some examples of this. You mentioned the new Apple chip. If you look at a Chromebook, for instance, and what's happening in the education space, let me restate that, has already happened. Many grade schoolers and middle schoolers are using Chromebooks. Like my daughter just finished 6th grade, and she's been using a Chromebook for the last 2 years. The requirement to have a lot of horsepower locally is not there as much when you're a basic consumer of information, or you're doing light creative work, right? You're working on things like spreadsheets or a Word document, or even like a presentation. And then if you think about the move of what we call line of business applications, here's another acronym for you, LOB, a line of business application, like a financial package, or something to handle manufacturing, or really anything that you use that is specific to your industry. A lot of these systems are no longer installed on your local computer. There's a web version of it. So the propensity and all the indicators are showing that the requirement for a lot of hardware in your local hands isn't as the demand for it isn't as high as it used to be. So if I had to guess, based upon my industry knowledge and experience, is that, I think you're going to see a lot more people using more slimmed down versions of computers, and not so much the the heavy horsepower things. Now, Joe, in your business with a lot of video editing and production and things like that, that's really hard to do. You do need the processor, you do need the RAM, you do need the fast performance. So it's difficult to do those things. Same thing for marketing folks. If you're dealing with a heavy, a lot of graphics, not so much. Architectural firms, construction, things like CAD or other industries that just have an old legacy system that require a lot of horsepower to run because it's still running locally, are still going to need that. So it's not going to, people think, oh, I use a Chromebook and an iPad and my smartphone and like that's the way the whole world is. That's your view of the world, but it's not the reality for everybody.
Yeah, no, you're 100%. I mean, and look, that is everybody's perception, right? Is what they see in front of them.
Correct.
It's funny. So as in our business, of course, once this all took from being in person to being online, as we looked around to our, 70 plus computers, we're like, none of these computers can actually run this stuff online.
Yeah.
Because they're not designed for that. Most of the machines we used in the field for an event, they're running one thing at a time. That's the nature of how we set them up.
Yep.
Because in a production base, it has to be instant. And that's part of it. So if one video is going to run, that's only on one machine. If one PowerPoint's going to run, it's only going to be on one machine. There's a backup to that machine as well.
Yes.
But to stream an event, record an event, bring in remote callers and everything be remote, that's a lot of horsepower.
Correct. And if I can unveil a little bit of the secrets behind the curtain for like this particular production and this event, the email that I got from your team was providing me advice on what I should do to set up properly, that I should be using a hardwired connection. I need to have a stable, internet connection, try not to use a shared connection, so on and so forth. There was a checklist of things, which basically said, you got to have some, make sure you're using the heaviest duty technology that you can for the best experience, because these types of things require a different level of technology.
No, you're right. And so that was just something we noticed immediately. And look, we had to update our infrastructure, and you guys know that.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we consulted with you guys right away because we're following those steps and Robert's rules. I didn't know there were so many rules, but I mean, there's a lot.
There are more.
I don't know if I'm ready for them yet. Let's keep moving ahead here.
Each one will be its own episode.
No wonder it took so long to get you on here. We're going to need hours.
Well, definitely.
Now, listen, I love the way you talk about systems and putting people in the right seat and building a team and culture, because certainly we recognize those things to be 100% needed. And if you want to be a successful small business, you need them. You have to have something that is intangible to go with the tangible.
To me, it's permission to play. Otherwise, you're doomed for failure. Or worse, you may be doomed for mediocrity, which means if you failed, it means you're probably on to something else where you may be successful. But if you're doomed for mediocrity, then you're kind of stuck in limbo, which in my opinion is worse, because you haven't completely failed. You haven't learned your lesson. You haven't. So yeah, you're preaching to the choir here on this one. Culture is huge here. Or core values and core behaviors is massively important. And yes, culture does trump strategy, but strategy is also really, really critical here. So we like to think that we do at least a pretty good job of blending both.
Well, I like to think you guys made a lot of impressive improvement and growth, especially in the last decade or so. I mean, you guys just won the Business Council Hall of Fame award just this year. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was a prize that I, both personally and professionally, had, dare I use the word, coveted for many years. I mean, we applied and kept applying. We kept thinking we're going to win it this year. And, there were a bunch of disappointing years, but we kept faith. And we knew that it was only a matter of time before we would be recognized for our achievements, especially if we keep improving our business every year, which we have. And so, but it was still a very sweet tasting victory and a great surprise when Marcia had called my business partner and I to announce that we were the winners. I was delighted. It was great news to receive, especially during a time like at the beginning of this year where the mood of the country was still a little bit sour.
Yeah, no, I think it was well deserved. I mean, you guys
Thank you.
really been doing some great things. And, I'm not sure what Marissa Madonia agrees with, but she wrote, I agree. So I think she agrees that it was well deserved and that it was the right time for the award.
Well, I agree with her just agreeing. So
what a big, happy crowd. I mean, who knew?
Yeah, well, it's like this Business Council connection, right? We're all like, if I can just put in a quick plug for them, just even though I'm a board member, right?
And you're on.
They don't pay me for this, right? I just love talking about them because my business wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today without that organization. The fertile ground of just connections and friendships, and we found both partners and team members through there, as well as people that we've engaged with for their services, the advice that we get, just the differences, not necessarily differences of opinion, but just the collective opinion and the intelligence in that community is astounding. I just can't imagine operating a business in Westchester County without being a part of that organization.
Well, I do agree with you. We've been members for a long time. Marcia and her team are incredible.
Yes, they
and
are.
Always looking to connect others. And I think that's the idea behind the group, is connecting people, especially like-minded, in the sense of trying to help each other out. And
yes,
and I'm sure that that's part of, how you've been able to help your business stand out and succeed.
Yeah, you just got to show up with like that go-giver heart, right? Like, not what's in it for me, but hey, how can I help somebody else? And I'm a big believer in karma, right? You do good, good's going to come back to you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I'm not sure what Dardano's referring to. I don't know if I met you at Antons. I know I met him at Antons, and he's done a lot of things over the years.
It's very likely. Yeah, that's that physically doesn't even exist any longer. But yeah, those breakfasts at Antons, wow, that takes me back. That's almost 20 years ago.
Well, it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's part of the interesting thing as you see each company's business evolve on top of it. Take the technology perspective out for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But watching other businesses evolve. And again, that culture becomes a real driving point. And I know it's become more and more important to me every year. And as we're coming out of this and we're kind of reshaping ourselves a little bit, that's become kind of a hot button.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you kind of want to work with people that you like and that share some of the same values.
You do. I mean, you have to be able to deliver on the service, but ultimately
the results have got to be there. It's
Yeah.
not even a question.
And people do business with, those that they know, like, and trust, right? So that's what it's about. It's about building trust, building confidence in people, and just putting yourself out there so they get to know who you are.
That's a good point. Well, look, as a business owner, any other tips for fellow business owners on keeping perspective, keeping balance?
Yeah,
it's kind of hard sometimes.
It is very difficult. So here's a piece of advice that I've given to a few people, some of which have actually acted upon it. So I'm glad to hear that. Here at Progressive, we joined an industry peer group in 2010. And last year, they actually tapped me not to be a member any longer, but to actually facilitate not one, but two groups. So that means that I've got two groups of about 10 different competitors of mine in separate geographies that I lead through quarterly on-site meetings. And I'm not going to go into all the details of the power of that organization, but that's another thing that has completely transformed our business, the power of peers. It's one thing to be able to sit, you and I, Joe, to go grab a cup of coffee and talk business, and your experiences, my experiences. Maybe you're having a little, troubles with, I don't know, like an HR issue or a legal issue. And, we can bounce things off each other, but it's quite another experience when you're in a structured peer group where you're talking to people who are doing the same exact thing that you're doing, and you're all willing to share. the amazing potential is unleashed there about how those insights can help you overcome the unique and specific challenges within your business and your industry. So I highly encourage you, if there is such an organization in your industry, you really should look into it. A lot of them do virtual stuff, even pre-pandemic. Some of them are more like what I described, where we're actually in person. We got to get on a plane every 3 months, which is fine by me. Some could be more local. I mean, it all really depends. But for me, when you get together with your peers, not just your business peers in your community, but peers in your industry, that opens up tremendous doors for you.
Yeah, there's just a different shared experience.
Totally.
You know, they actually know what you're going through.
Yeah.
They've already come up with an idea.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good idea or fits you, to be determined. But
yeah, you can learn from their failures and their successes, and
absolutely.
Some things work for some people and not for others, but it's a lot more contextual when, you know, I can tell you until I'm blue in the face about some problem that we solved here, but it may not apply to your business at all because it's just a different type of company. So
yeah, and we've been actively involved in a lot of groups ourselves that are industry related because it is so specific. You know, that is part of it too. So
yeah.
And honestly, it's within our world, our technology and production folks. They're split up into, you know, different sections as well. So we tend to gravitate towards the one that fits us best. But
yeah,
I try to have as many conversations as possible and just keep learning and listening, because there's always something that someone's doing that could be applicable.
Yeah,
and could help.
Sure.
Know? So I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, and I think you'll find, you know, you got to let your guard down, right? I think people feel like, oh, my competitor is like kind of like my enemy, but I'm going to smile, you know, in front of him or her. Don't do that. Like, you'd be surprised how many people might actually thank you for the outreach, to say, hey, I'm glad we got together and we were able to share some stuff. You know, we compete, but, you know, there's so much business around here. You know, I've never run into you. So anyway, that's my tip.
Well, that's a great tip. You know, I see some attaboys here. You guys have been a great partner. It's ramped up to virtual. Look at this: Sam, Rick, Nancy, Kevin. Wow. I always find that when people know each other's names, it's a good sign.
It is a good sign, yes.
I see some other comments here. Gabe, we have to improve everyone's infrastructure, especially with broadband, make it utility.
Well, that's an interesting point, because everything that I've been talking about assumes that you've got a way to get on the internet. So certainly you can't operate on the information superhighway if you're only doing 20 miles an hour. So,
well, I know that in the beginning, you know, of course, we've been, while working a lot of the webinars and seminars, sometimes you got to listen too. And as we're listening, you know, I at one point had heard in the very beginning that 20% was the number of Yonkers school children that could actually access school online.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Which is an insane number.
Yeah.
I mean, so how are they supposed to get on, you know, to classes if there is no connection?
Yeah, that's a massive challenge. So, you know, it's easy for me to paint like these broad paintbrush strokes about, or you know, you might hear a politician or some other leader saying, well, this is what we got to do, and we got to, you know, this is what we're like. Well, like, there's a practicality behind technology that needs to be carefully considered before we make these broad decisions like that. Because like we saw, I mean, even though it was important from a health safety perspective, the assumption that people will just go online and listen, and even in well-to-do families, I saw this in my own neighborhood, where families were unable to all work together because they just simply didn't have the space or even the number of devices needed. When you have 3-4 kids and 2 parents working from home, there aren't 6 computers in the house, right? And you're all trying to do.
There's not 6 quiet spaces either.
And there's not 6 quiet spaces either, right? So there's a lot of logistical challenges that sometimes aren't always obvious.
Well, I'm questioning what's going on behind this wall right now. I know that there's a broadband line connected, though. I'm sure there's a game involved.
You hear loud noises? I don't hear it, so maybe other people hear it. But.
You know, the headphones, I can't hear anything, so I only hear you. That's it. I do see one other comment here. Mike had mentioned cloud-based computing is more hackable than closed systems. Is that true, number one?
I'm going to reject Mike Dardano's statement that cloud systems are more hackable. I would argue that any technology either configured properly or configured improperly is either going to be very secure or very insecure. So there's a way to do, like, just because something is local doesn't mean I can't, hack it or break in. There are a lot of different ways to get into that system. The only way to really truly protect information and computer systems is to cut the power cord and bury it in concrete. So just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's more hackable. You just have to be a little bit more mindful about the fuzziness of what we call the perimeter, right? Because if your things are up in the cloud in a lot of different places and people are working from home, the way you protect those systems becomes a new challenge for IT. But, luckily we've got it figured out. So you just need to make one phone call.
So cement shoes for the computer, is that what you're advising?
Yeah, bury it in concrete and toss it in the ocean and it'll be perfectly safe there. It's really the only way. But if you want to connect to society at all, you're already inherently unsafe.
Okay. So maybe it's his 126-year-old computer. Maybe that's the problem?
I'm thinking that that's probably more the problem, yes.
Well, I think a lot of people are, they're obviously concerned. I mean, you read, at least once a week, there's some major hack, into some major organization that theoretically has more resources and technology to stop these sorts of things. But,
correct. But the hackers are also living by the premise of the size of the prize, right? So if I want to hack and get 500 million credit card numbers, and I know, Joe, that you don't store credit card numbers, but if you did, you wouldn't have 500 million of them, right? I'm gonna go after a Home Depot or a Target, not a corporate AV, not a Progressive Computing of the worlds. Now, it's not to say that the hackers aren't coming after organizations of our size. In fact, they're actually keenly coming after us, but for different reasons, more for ransomware. Because if I shut your business down of 10, 15 people and demand 5 or 10 grand to have all your systems back, maybe you might write that check, right? Depending upon how well we've responded to protect your systems. Yes, it's a major complicated decision, but to think that I'm small and they won't hack me is wrong thinking. But to think that you're the only target because we have limited IT budgets versus a massive corporation is also wrong thinking.
Before I get to that comment, and no one should ever respond to emails where your CEO needs 10 Amazon gift cards. So I received this several times about 2 weeks ago, and everybody, it wasn't Amazon, it was some other gift card. They're like, Joe, did you send this? I'm like, does that sound like me?
Yeah.
They're like, no. I said, did you look at the email address? Because it's not mine.
There's a lot of social engineering.
But it's all over the place.
Yeah. And it's, that's why we've also introduced security awareness training as part of our baseline security package now, so that our end users that we support are, you got to watch the video and you got to learn from it. You got to answer a couple of questions. And if you get them wrong,
send in the link, I think. Yeah, we're going to send it over to Jim.
Yeah. So you got to watch these things. It's really the only way to keep abreast of, what are some of the types of attacks or some of the tricks that are out there. We call this the human firewall, right? People become very, not complacent, but a lot of businesses and leaders and decision makers are thinking, I paid all of this money for all of this great technology. How come we got hacked? And many of the times it's because of the social engineering, because I was able to trick somebody to do something that they should not have done. So this concept of the human firewall, building up the people within the organization, getting them to be a lot more aware. I mean, you don't need to pass a technical certification to achieve this level, but you need to have some basic awareness. Like Marissa posted, like, hey, like if the CEO asks you to go out and get Amazon cards, that's probably a scam, right? Or maybe he or she actually did. Why don't you just call them on their cell phone and say, did you just send? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Because it totally looked like a scam. So this is the concept is we can't
So you have a video for this?
On the human firewall?
On what you're talking about, the training on?
Yeah, we send monthly videos. Not everybody is fully engaged yet, so you're probably on our list to get you slipped into that system if you haven't seen them yet. I don't have a mental record of where everybody is, but once a month you'll be getting a security awareness training video, and you'll have to answer a couple of quick questions just to make sure that you understood it and you weren't just eating your lunch while playing the video.
So I can't eat my lunch while I play the video?
You just have to pay attention. I don't care if you eat.
Oh, okay. All right. Just checking.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hungry right now, to be honest. But security awareness, I think that's a very good starting point.
Yes.
Honestly, because sometimes you can stop things easily and simply just by having some general understanding.
And I'll tell you that, I don't have solid data. It's more qualitative data than quantitative data, but I can tell you qualitatively over the last 12 to 18 months, most of the security incidents that we've been helping with or responding to because something might have happened at one of our partners is generally because of what Marissa was kind of alluding to. Someone received an email. It looked totally legit, right? It was well crafted, but it was fake. Right. And, someone's process broke, or someone just, had a moment of weakness, was gullible enough to think that this was legitimate, and then followed a course of action. And technology doesn't necessarily stop that from happening.
No, you're right. Very good points. Look, I don't want to tie you up too much longer, Rob. Any final tips for people as they're working from home and going back to the office and engaged in technology 24/7?
There are so many different things that I can point to, and that is whatever, if you are at all ever feeling that you just aren't comfortable with, let's say, a security concern, don't sweep it under the rug. Make sure that you're getting the right help and advice. And if you're not understanding what a technology professional is telling you, then they're quite frankly not doing their job properly. They need to be able to articulate things to you in a way that you can comprehend and give you the comfort and the confidence to know that your systems are secure. So whoever that is, whether it's a sister-in-law who works in the industry, or whether it's a company like ours, or whether it's even staff that you have, you should be able to interface with technology people who can put things in a way that you can you don't need to know how to do the things, but you should at least be able to be confident that you understand things. And if that's not you, if you're not understanding or you're not confident, then you should seek additional help.
I think that makes complete sense. These are really great tips, Robert. I appreciate all your help. And for anyone who is not aware of Progressive Computing, there's a website. Check them out. These guys are everywhere. Certainly Business Council members, you know all about them, but I'm sure the Westchester County Association members know all about them as well. If not, go check them out. Talk to Robert and his team. We already saw, that look at these smiling faces.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to work with these guys?
That's when I had shorter hair too.
Well, that was pre-pandemic.
Yes, it was.
So there was one more comment, I believe, and it was probably from your friend. Mike Dardano wants to know when you're going to bring your guitar to jam.
I got it right here, Mike. Hold
on. And the analogs. Uh-oh.
I'm not playing a song, though, Mike. Sorry.
Okay.
You'll have to wait till we're in person, but I'll give you one chord. Wow. Does he know what chord that was?
I can't answer that. All right, we're going to let that be.
Maybe it's the mic that doesn't pick up the sound well enough.
I don't know. He just kind of yells into it, so it's a little different. I'm not sure if he.
I like that style, though. I appreciate that kind of music. So.
Oh, there are comments. I don't know what they are. I think I'm just going to keep moving. Oh, G. A G chord is what Jim Marlowe said.
Very good, Jim. That was a G. Did you cheat by looking at my hand, or did you actually hear it?
I'm sure based on his knowledge that he heard.
He heard it.
That I'm sure of.
All right.
But either way, listen, Robert, thank you very much for your time today. Everybody make sure to check out Progressive Computing. Robert Cioffi, congratulations on your Hall of Fame award. Please tell Ugo we said hello.
Very much appreciated.
And Ryan Finch also says hello. He wishes he could have been.
Yeah, I'm mad at him. Tell Ryan
I'm going to send him the recording.
Yeah, well, yeah, he has to watch it a few times.
And some security awareness videos too. I'm going to send him both and tell him he can't eat.
And he can't eat. Yeah, you can't eat when you're watching this stuff. You have to pay attention. And there's a test. There's a test at the end.
There's definitely going to be a test.
Test your knowledge. So
good stuff. Well, hey, listen, thanks again, Robert.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we'll be speaking soon.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. My hat I take off to you and salute you for all that you do for the community as well.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And so it's we've come to that time here. We're at the end of the show. Hopefully everybody has learned. I mean, Robert's got some tremendous tips, not just on the technology and IT side. You know, certainly we talked about consulting, you know, with the technology partner. You know, that was something that Robert said right from the beginning. Start with your strategic plan, but also get those people involved because there's just so many things. Everything is connected right now. And we talked about building a culture and a team and really about having the right people in the right seat. You know, make sure that you have people on board that understand your vision and what you guys are trying to do. And then, of course, they can deliver the results. And, you know, I mean, we talked about a whole bunch of things, but just trying to keep your eye on the prize. Don't settle for mediocrity. That's mediocrity. Who wants that? It's terrible, you know. But look, why don't you come on back next week? We'll be on Wednesday at 1. We might even have Ryan come back. I'm not sure. We'll see how the summer plays out and how the 4th of July goes. Everybody enjoy your holiday. We want you to subscribe to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And it's time. We're out. Have a great day, everybody.